I'm Winy Maas, I'm the M of MVRDV. I'm an architect and landscape architect from Rotterdam, and I'm here to think about the future city and how the city of the future will look like. And I will give you a bucket list of, say, targets that that future city needs to do. And I will do that from a big scale, how the city will look like, to a small scale, every product design that we have to make in order to make those cities and our cities better in a while. And what I hope that you learn from it, and that you make your own targets that contribute to a wider and better planet, and that you experiment as much on it and hope to inspire you with that.
Nice, thank you very much. Good to be here in this wonderful event, and I'm already impressed this morning what I've seen. I think your attempt to make, to see a little bit to the future, to look forward, and to think what that we can do is what I hope to contribute to with this kind of now, new, next thing. It's about the evolutionary city in that way that we are facing and that is everywhere around. And I must say, when I was reading with you last time a bit about this book, that some of you that became this kind of hype, especially on young generation, there are a lot of things that are kind of funny and beautiful in it. For instance, this, we are in a constant flux. But does it have direction? And according to him, it's yes. And that's what I love somehow, because somehow we are afraid of the future, but actually there is direction and we construct direction. And that's what this evolutionary city is about. And I always call it this kind of, what is the next, is a kind of title that I use along this last years, and that was since this guy died. And then on the cover of the Time, what a magazine, of course. What's next is a fantastic, it's provocative that they did it in that way, but I think it's also an honor that some people can think in this nextness. Of course, when you think about next, then it's about now also. And there's a very moment of time that there are dramatic climate changes, that there's a drop of resources, there are differences in income still. There are social tensions here and there. The issue of globalization is there for better and for worse. There is growth in population and in consumption and in water, energy and waste. So what can we do about that? That's the agenda that I would like to work on it. And it's not a singular agenda. It's not only green, I want to say. Because if I put the question forward, what the city should be like, then we all say that we should be responsible, no? Or that we should be open or curious. That yes, we should be green, and that we need to produce energy, water, food, oxygen, and be diverse. That we want to be, who is against making a city that's unhuman in that way, or that's not social? Well, some are here and there. Or a city that's not intimate. And don't we want all to be a city that's open and accessible, democratic, free, that's an adaptable, diverse, heterogeneous, please, let's do that. And welcoming in all senses. And of course, it can be different. It can be specialistic. And yes, it should take care of the history. And yes, why not lovely as a word also in our political agenda? Or why not beautiful also as a task for our presidents to say what our country or city should look like? And why not even use the word exciting and experimental in that? Yeah, in short, there's maybe one term that covers it all. That's wonderful in a way. On all scales. And that's what this lecture is a little bit about. That we can design cities, but we have to work both on a large scale to convince, say, our presidents and our leadership on giving directions, and on a very small scale, like design here at the design show, we have to work on that contribution. And that covers for all fields, from design to research, from material to urbanism. And let me try to span that gap today a little bit. Let's start with the world. And that's an XXL change. But there was one colleague that made from S to L a book. I think I want to go further to XXL to XXS in that way. It's a while ago that we made this book, KM3, which was about capacity of the planet. And where we explore, of course, this kind of, say, feelings. This is Mexico. And you see endless production of built things, basically shit. in that way, and that our answers have made. The same counts for Tokyo. I love Tokyo in its small scale, but its endlessness is also like saying our cities are growing and growing, our landscapes are growing. So we have to measure everything in that way. And does it contribute to this growth? And what do we do with scarcity? We did that at that moment with this, say, ecological footprint measurement. And then if we then say, think about our future, then we need to compensate our actions. I need already 3 United States to compensate its territory, despite. And if we want to behave like Americans, then I need almost like 4 planets to compensate everywhere. So there's a task to do. And architecture is then a tool or a device. But what I wanted to do in this case is to show with you some possible, if not impossible, worlds in that way. And I remember this piece of that book where we were thinking, what happens if we open up our borders? I mean, if you see how many people live in the US and how much they earn, and you compare it to China or to Sierra Leone, when you open the borders, probably people from Sierra Leone go to the US or to China. And that would lead to another kind of, say, balance. If we do this new balance, and everyone is middle class in the future, then we have another kind of composition. Then this density would gradually change in that exercise when we open up the borders. Yes, you have also a task to do. Yes, in the Netherlands, suddenly we will be one of the biggest countries in the world in that way if we adopt all those people. Is it bad or good? No, I think this is what is happening. But in the meantime, I was like considering if we optimize a little bit our world and say, where can we do things the best? Where grow bananas the best? Or where can I produce the best, say, solar energy? Then the maps will shift of oxygen, of, say, this kind of, say, agriculture. And I would, for every piece in the world, you would have an optimized situation. That means, in that way, also your country take another kind of position in that world, producing some kind of product because it's the best you can do. And the Middle East, I think that would be our source for our new kind of sustainable energies at that moment. And Afghanistan would have some kind of a future at that moment. And if we do that, then somehow I can house more people. Up to 61 billion is then doable on our planet. What is doable? I don't say it should be like that. I only say there is space to do if we are a little bit conscious about that. And what's next then? What we're now working on is this book, what is coming up hopefully soon, is KM4, which is about time, which is about evolution as such. And we do that in the Y Factory, which is like a think tank in Delft, where we made this tribune to talk with each other and to produce models like these Lego towers that are on show in Paris in the Centre Pompidou in June again. Please come. And we make studies and we sell them. We talk with them about our politicians at that moment. And that's what's needed, I think, in our universities. What can we contribute is a series of observations. Actually, this bucket list that I would like to do on contributing to the planet. And we sort them, that there is, of course, an abstract version, non-context, a model city that somehow goes over the planet. One thing I changed, say the sky cars that come soon, by the way, in half a year. And then then the whole city changes in that way. And if we apply that, say, on Hong Kong, in our Hong Kong fantasy book that comes out in the Venice Biennale, then you also see that it's localized at that moment. And we gather it in this software, in this space fighter, and I will give you glimpses of that. Because the new tool is not a library, but it's this giant, say, data, sorting machine that is going to happen. So here's some books of what to think about the future to think visionary. We need leaders somehow to make them. And the word visionary was a taboo. Was it for religious leaders normally? But actually it's incredibly important that generations like you come up gradually with how, say, different cities, how Bangkok should be. So let's then explore some of them, of this kind of, and the next book we made was about this, that this future city should be green, obviously. And there are many people thinking about it. And we made this contribution with the Green Dream, and there were 22, say, scholars that made some observation on Mr. or Mrs. Green in that way. And one of the striking ones, that was like, that one group explored that green buildings are insanely ugly. And why are they, most of them, ugly? Because they do this add-ons. they're good, but they're not integrated yet in our society. So then they use a lot of cliches, thin cliches in that way. And I'm aware this can be very good. And I come back to that. This green dip is a next step. And in many countries, glass is forbidden more in this case. So you make windows of 25. I mean, it looks like prisons more and more. If I go from Copenhagen to Milano, this is the architecture. Where is the architect? The bricks in between, this 60% that we can do. And yes, there are roofs more and more used, but we cannot reach them as such. So how can we make them? And there are more observations about the complexity, then, about the slowness in that book, about the misleadingness in ourselves, in the architecture, but also in our leaderships. We don't do enough. That's clearly also analyzed in that way, but they do have an impact, is what this book tries to say in its way. So we made this green city calculator in that way. That is, and based on all the green rules that are there, in all the LEED, BREEAMs, 5-star systems, passive house, but we want to try them that they communicate and that they work on a larger scale. Of course, it's good to think about a joule per square meter, but also when we make the cities more compact, what would that lead? So this has been culminating in a dream of a greenest city as such, and that's drawn here. And it looks like Mondrian, like a Dutch city, so it looks boring. So how to make that more sexy is then that comes along. And I'm very happy that many students teamed up with former patent holders to make them better. This thing, this crop rotator, for instance, I make tomatoes, and then they go up, and then the other tomato gets light. If you enlarge them to up to 6 meters high, then I can really make roofs that are not only urban farming in a kind of, say, hipster way, but also in a productive way, and that they can become cool. And then Barcelona would be fantastic at that moment and would be really self-sufficient. Or another one, if I go to drier climates, and at the moment that I make fat buildings, I can harvest water, is what this, say, patent was doing. And we enlarged that, and then Cairo would be suddenly have pyramids that make sense in that way, and that make it into... Or here, this is Amsterdam. And at the moment, with artists, we are working on this stuff. It's called water, and but if you put a drop in it, and a certain kind of, bacteria start to glow on a certain kind of distances. You know it, and it's so beautiful. Look, at that moment, if we do that, then Amsterdam doesn't need lights anymore, and we have canals where I want to swim in every day because it's with these glowing worms. And this one is now, going to build in Hong Kong. A group of students that took a patent, worked with that professor, made it better, solar cells that come together and that float in water, basically, and bring it to the city. But if you enlarge them, then it would be beautiful in that way. Then somehow, and if I put that in Phuket, then I would have a new beauty that somehow makes that, but partly it's quite ugly, and that's... somehow gets it into a kind of avatar age, and that we can convince everybody to make our cities and accelerate this green dream. And then what's next? Soon I work on biodiversity to make with the students a city where wolves could come in. But wolves need goats need mice. Mice needs insects and other kind of things. So this is a calculation of what the sequence of food is needing. And then we have to design products. Where are the designers? Here, this is in Amsterdam, using the tram rails in the future to make tram rails that can be occupied by that kind of species. Of course, there's someone waiting to eat them in that way. Or this one, this product that now is under production. These are stones that are hollow, just bricks like you have in the Netherlands. But they are so porous that they absorb sound. And that's always wonderful. If I walk in a city where the first snow has fallen, you hear nothing in that way. And as a side effect, if I do that, this silent city, then these guys come in. We can make more beds in our city, and then Amsterdam somehow gets a kind of compensation of tourists and become also inhabited by the others, by other clients. That's what we try to do in this next book. And then, of course, I do hope with that this, say, image of the planet somehow starts to change into something like that. And with that, I want to show, of course, next year on Davos, that we as leaderships can do that maybe in the future. Okay, let's go for a moment to Costa Rica. Why Costa Rica? Because Costa Rica is exemplary. 25% of national parks, or the ground of national parks. And we are working with them towards 50% on that, which is, of course, there's nothing else to do. But it's beautiful, of course, for film sets, you know, some of them. But if you drive there, I still love when you have this drive, and wow, this is a cool city, I would say. The facades are wonderful. Or if I take a boat, if Venice would look like this, then you would have really grand canals. And I would say that this is the best, say, facade and rich as possible. And yes, now we measure that how steep can we plant in this kind of jungles can be done. Up to 80 degrees we can make it. And then it's better. I mean, the Bosco Verticale, I love it in Milano. But then we can do it more, say, stable as such in modeling. That is what the green dip is about. I mean, if we have ice cream like magnums that dip in chocolate, in this case, let's dip our cities in green. And then I come back to Sapiens in that way. Look to what is happening there. This is so beautiful, I must say. Biology enables, culture forbids. That's partly true in that way. That's an eye-opener. Because who is against biology? Yes, some of the gene manipulators maybe. But that's what so here, and also what is fantastic, I think, in this quote, is that from a biological perspective, nothing is unnatural or unusual in that way. So there's a work to do. So what kind of, say, combination can we make is this operation? And then I go down. I take you to Seoul, of course, this year, where the greyest city on the planet, it was done. And 2.0 is a policy with Mr. Park, what's in a name, the mayor, who transformed the plaza into this. And then later he made this canal, basically in the city instead of a highway, or this plaza in front of the parliament building. Some people say that due to this act, openness has arisen in southern Korea. More protests than ever, that's true. And I think it's very good. And yes, a president that had to leave because of that. And probably some people say that is maybe the cause of architecture in that way and of this kind of green development. So we have a task to do that. And Seoullo, this Botanic Bridge, plays a role in that way. So what we did, of course, was this kind of ugly 70s, 60s viaduct on one of the most ugly parts of Seoul, which is, you cannot beat. Where can I walk? Nowhere. It's always only this infrastructure next to the central station. So it was so smart of the politics to say, if we want to greenify these monsters, we have to start to get rid of the cars, in this case, and turn that into a park. And how to make that? So some of you might have seen it, the viaduct, how it was. There are many projects in that way to make it in a kind of green dip. A lot of, say, this is going into the structure as such. The floor is a very stabilizing element in this area, and it becomes a project in itself where we show the plans. I cannot use all the money and for weight of the pots, so I have to make pots and to plant them, but to use them for this kind of fantastic differentiation. I mean, every plant has another kind of soil. So we use it also, not also as an experiential walk from difference to difference, but also as a kind of laboratory. I want to know how much sand I need, how much water does it keep, how much maintenance, how do they grow in that way, and how much, say, de-icing do I need, or how much heating up do I need. Every species are there and gathered in what I call the Arboretum project, because we collect them from all the sites of Seoul, and then we put them in a Korean order from, what is it, A till Z, but I cannot pronounce it. So we bring it, we start in the east and we go to the west, is what basically this project is about. And you can walk from, say, apples to pears in that way. And that is accompanied with text on the soil, on the pots. Even when there are utilities, say toilets, welcome, but you absorb a plant. Cafes, shops, street libraries, they're all there. And in that way, they function as somehow a kind of plant village, one could say. And then, yes, it should be 24/7, which is hard in New York. Maybe we can do it here better. And the light system, I will show you later, provides that. And yes, it needs access to it on all sides, new stairs, new bridges. And then satellites can grow next to it. So what is next? We tested it. I think that's always very important in any project. Make prototypes and discuss it with people and see what is good and bad about it. And yes, we changed because of that the soil system, the water system, and the information system, for instance. And what is next then? I walk with you down. I see this happening. Okay. It starts to, you can walk over the viaduct, see the first species over there, see the first shops. I continue in the maple area, Azer, and I can sit to it, so people start to occupy it. There are bridges to cafes, restaurants that somehow now become more important, and we sell now already 6, 7 bridges, so that share this operation. And yes, you can dance in the Magnolia area, and you can continue. You can go down to the metro. You see all the pipe and ductwork to de-ice and to keep the water and to filter it in that way, suspended from the ceiling. And on top, you have this illusion of all the species that bring you further. Yes, you can, of course, swim here and there, or you can jump, is what it wants to be. Yes, you have picture points, not only 1, but hopefully 1,000 in that way. And yes, there are shadow devices, there are sprinklers that we test in order to, how do these plants not only survive, but grow. And of course, there's heritage that looks down on the traffic with you. You can walk through the pine trees, have a sit next to the water lilies, go up and have these viewpoints in that way, and again, a picture point is there. The ginkgos are the center part of the Korean culture, and you continue to the plaza where we can play, and yes, you have the sprinkler system for the hot days. It's an extreme climate. It can be minus 20, like 2 weeks ago, and it can be plus, say, 40 in that way. And how can these guys then survive? And that is what we are doing and testing right now. It's not a park. It's a laboratory and a test zone, a library almost of all these species, and that is given to Korea to think what you can do in the greenification of that city. That this green dip can continue in a while with all this collection that is there. And then these are the images. But what is next? I was a bit surprised that this is only 1 hectare, just 2 soccer fields are on this. And then people started somehow to like it in that way, and then it became a little bit busy at that moment, and we were like, yeah, that was a bit, so this phone call, you have to add bridges and you have to add stairs because they are too full. And this is what, say, between 6 and 8 is happening in Seoul. But it continues, and actually I'm very happy with that moment, that up till 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the night, you want to be there. Soap operas are filmed because you have this kind of, it's a park. It's not like on a soccer field that you are lit too much by light, but it's kind of soft light, even in the public realm, and then you want to kiss your lover, is what it wants to say. And that's what a park is about. So it floods in this blue light. It's lit by the plants, their names, and with the spotlights, they become the stars in the universe. It's a kind of, that's what this story is about and what I would like to welcome. And then, yes, this is how it went over the planet, how it somehow is evaluated a little bit, and how now, with the number of visitors that are there, we're talking, I mean, it's the same as, more or less, as Euro Disney, that is now walking over a very small site, and how to do. So if this was the situation, and this is how it is now we're working on this kind of extension, and to what's next is growing. We make this path. New competitions are coming up for buildings that should be inspired by this collection and should use it over the coming time. So please welcome to participate in these competitions and to gradually to change this gray monster that was called Seoul to turn it into Seoul 2.0. So somehow architecture gradually becomes urbanism. And I'm happy that after a while, on this spot in Seoul, we can do a tower that we would like to do. I mean, this is a very Asian issue. You make towers, you make a plinth for shopping, and then they say, oh, and add some water, because for the people that's nice. So colleagues are doing that. Towers, plinth, water. Towers, plinth, water. Towers, plinth, water. I mean, even Jean Nouvel, tower, plinth, water. So is this the future on this site? So can't we then, when this is the site, can't we connect the hills with our operation a little bit more and make something like this and refer to something like this in art so that this, we simply stretch up is what we are doing at the moment. So how to do that? And if this is the program, we bump it up in that way and to turn it into these towers. that underneath you find the cupolas of the shopping mall in that way, and that every tower has another kind of composition from shopping to hotel or to houses. This is, of course, the bubble diagram that we did with Jordi to see what is where to place it. And you know that in any shopping center. And then we selected that out of this array, these towers that are now there. And this is the selection that comes out. Start on the parking, you go up in the cupolas area, and then gradually you make these towers from the bottom to the top. And you make these peaks that somehow is then some kind of this mountain-esque, but you have floors, terraces, and I can inhabit it now with the knowledge of Seoullo Bridge, to plant it full with boxes, because that's the best way to do. And I can make this now in the end and turn it then into this. Didn't someone say avatar that I was looking at? And that somehow became then this kind of environment is what this dream, after a couple of years, now becomes possible. And then I go further to the M scale, because I can apply that knowledge further. Now in Jakarta, on this site, we are making more buildings in Jakarta, but here, next to the governor's place, they asked us, make here a shopping center. Make a place that's dedicated to leisure with a hotel. And then well, how can they do that? And the governor said, well, it should be, I don't want to see it from my window. So how to do that at that moment is like, when this is, say, the situation, this is all how we build it up, and then it terraces it up, then it's done. Oh, this becomes a mountain range with openings, of course, the internal voids that are there, how we make paths that climb the mountain and then greenify it maximally in this area. Here you see the section with the interior of that and the plants that accompany that, but that's too boring to explain now in that way. But of course, what's interesting, how does it work? What kind of things am I making, and can I, say, maintain that? So we make this kind of series of planters, and they are scripted in that way, so there are thousands of them, and that are connected with each other, with pipework, in that way, with the soil, and then this is my new shopping mall, I said. And my client asked, where is my shopping mall? And that's exactly the point we are having, because this is the view from the governor's house at the moment. And you walk around it, and finally, Jakarta gets something like a hill. The new, say, Bogor can be then imagined on this place. And it becomes, we construct it out of lava blocks, obviously, because that's much more nicer for the plants to grow. And then I can walk over the top from place to place. And yes, we know that the climate is fantastic. And then I dream about the next step in it. And now under construction in that way. So I hope to see you there in a year from now to make this green dream thinkable. This is chapter number 1. Because, of course, it was obvious. I told you to think about green. But it's more interesting to think about, say, the other aspects of it. And I'll take you to another sites in that way. Let's take this green as one step further and look at on a higher scale. So, on an urbanistic scale, because it's nice to make good buildings, but we are talking here also for bigger environments. That was the quest that you had to me. So I bring you now into an urbanistic, say, challenge as such. Urbanism is not sexy. There are not so many urbanists, and I think that's a problem. Most urbanists, they work on planning rules as such. Oh, this is a mistake. But they should work, of course, on visualization, on making things more clear in our society and make them beautiful as such. But you have to do it always with people. And that's urbanism. It's not like, it's super bottom-up. So I'll give you 2 examples in that way. First, Amsterdam, Almere. Almere is, say, built in the 70s and 80s to get the poor people out of that city and put them in a corner. And on the concept of a kind of garden city. So this is this poor environment that has been created. I'm very sad about that, and I use that, of course. But they made a beautiful plan somehow. So they said, and it was in those days, you should live in the forest. Of course, it has some problems, and people are raped in between, but ideally, it is a kind of nice to see it. But you have to update that. So what we're doing is Almere 2.0. And here plans how to negotiate that. So this is the original plan, and we do add this. That's too complicated, you can see. But basically is this. We make a new metro line to Amsterdam and to Utrecht, and we make 5 new garden cities. So every 20,000 people, 20,000 houses every time, and then to make a collection of new interpretations of the word garden city. So here you start, you come from Amsterdam, there's first a tunnel, then it comes out here in our first city, I will explain that, and go further through these 5 garden cities that makes this growth possible of this region. Yes, this is the first stop in that way, the island as such. Because at the moment it's a lake like this, and it went wrong, this lake. It is not pristine blue like here or like in the Philippines. It is like brown as coffee. And what can we do about that? It's simply by making an emerging city that cleans this whole thing. So with hydrologists, we work on a pit, we suck all the things out, we move it through these swamps and through our cities with the canals that are designed like that, then I can clean that lake. And that is so architecture and urbanism can do something if you want to do that. Then we start to the next, here the metro comes, and we make on this side like an expo to show how you can live. Please, Amsterdammers, come to here, this place it wants to say. And we continue to the center, where here the site around that lake, we transform it into a ring city and end maybe in this, say, zone. And I explain this also in this kind of East Almere and transform it into a combination of agriculture and urbanism. So let me show those 2 things. Let me take you first to Oosterwold. That is that piece on the right where I ended here. That looks a little bit like Russia at the moment, and with a steppe. So what we say in that zone, you can do what you want. You can make what it is, but always you have to do it yourself, and you are not allowing to harm your neighbor. So if I want to make a circle, fine, but you have always to collect also with a farmer to make it possible. And if I do that, then suddenly I make an urbanism with surprises, because it's made by you, and by you, and by you. This is free land, it's called. And how it's, say, under production, where this starting, and how you gradually you can do what you want, but solve it yourself. Water, cleaning, and energy will be done, not by the state, but by yourself. And then this gradually starts to become something like that. So what is next? Because you don't believe me when I show that. That's always a problem with urbanism. So here you see the first plots and how, say, we work with different, say, people and groups to work on it. And now you can see that people are making these things, this agriculture plus, say, houses at that moment, that they make this sewage facilities their own way and gradually turn it into something which they are proud of and which has this kind of combination of intense farming and intense housing. And that continues the coming year. This was the last year. 80 different, say, groups are working on it. This is for the coming year, and they sketch themselves what it is. It's sometimes very ugly, but that's not the issue. It makes it into a new interpretation of the garden-esque in that way. And that's what Oosterwold is about. So yes, you can do with bottom-up more than you think. And the Floriade, the Expo in 2022, and I'm here also to talk with you because I want to invite you for that. We won that for the center city in that way. And that's here, on this very spot. If I look at it, then on the right side I see a shopping center, the center of Almere, and here we are going to make a new city center. If I look to, from my side and look to the other side, this is done by Rem Koolhaas, which is nice, but we're not going to copy it. So I imagine that in the future, the view of Rem to us is like this, that we do a kind of, say, the opposite, say, green dream, and that is what it wants to do. And we do it like this. We make this city 60 hectares, starting with 1,000 houses and 100,000 square meter of program, and everyone should, this is architecture. This is the feeling that it should be. I should be overwhelmed by plants, is what it wants to say. So I invite you. Also, I hope that Bangkok is participating in this operation. Soon you will, and maybe you can help in order with one of your architects. And we have the money to make that house, and we sell it after you have gone in that way to other people. That's what we provide. So it's not an expo like it used to be in Shanghai or in the one in Doha, what is coming. It wants to be there afterwards, is what it wants to say. But you have to take one plant. You can choose only one. And then you have to cover yourself with that and make a beautiful story out of that. Can be tulips, can be wisterias. This is a beautiful place, I would say. Or with this ivy, I can make really huge, nice buildings. Or this would be a fantastic wall in that way. Or who doesn't want to live in such a kind of housing? And we can do it in an artificial way. We know that people can do it in that way. That are the ingredients, one plant. And then your neighbor, say, has another one and looks like this. So all these plots together become, and then of course I make a concert hall that looks like this, or I want to play like this, or in that way, yeah, and an underground world dancing should be, of course, in this. And the Dutch love sleeping in this kind of environment, so why not use a hotel or like that, and then we can make this kind of collection is what it wants to be. And that 1,000 plots are we going to make, and here they are, and how they are on that spot, and how they are presented. It's like a planned city in that way. And with the knowledge of Seoul, we try to apply it now further. These are my real clients in that way, from A till Z. These are all the plants that can grow in the Netherlands, from berberis to, say, and azalea to zenobia can be there. And of course, we place them from A till Z. And we make 2 towers, the Alpha and Omega towers, to show the plantations that are north or south in the climates in that way. And then I can make something. Then you can wonder, where is the architect in this case? That is exactly the case. I hate this style, this discussion. This is a wonderful, say, school that we're going to make. This is the good boulevard. This is a fantastic, say, seafront that we can make, where all this collection is there and that it presents itself there. And how it goes over the highway, the model with all the different, say, species that we can imagine. Yes, there's a marina quarter. Yes, there are cute streets, only 6 meters wide. And then it goes like this, basically, and we can, that's what we do. And I do hope that you invite you, that we open the office there. We are working on the realization at the moment. There are lorries driving. We think where should be the roads and how to work with the existing situation. So I do hope that, that you will be there also in that near future. So yes, green cities find different, say, translations. It's what it wants to say, this PowerPoint. So let me take you to another city, because I think it's nice to show you in that way methodologies on working together. So I want to, of course, to take you to Rotterdam, my home city in that way, and to express a little bit about the accessibility that is so important everywhere in our situations. And Rotterdam was, of course, looked like this. It was very European, and then something happened with our neighbors, and they flattened the city in that way. But Rotterdam was, in that way, not intimidated by it, and they started to work in about 7 generations on always make your ideal. And the next ideal talks with the neighbor. I think these buildings that come out of that, from this to this, and they talk with each other because they want to add something to what I call the Rotterdam Collection. I think that is kind of nice to invite people to that. So what we also did, and when we were asked to make this thing and to say, to make some housing and a market hall in between, and our developer said, yeah, something like Miralles in Barcelona is okay, yeah? You know, it's a small roof. And I said, no. I think Rotterdam is about also to make it more accessible and to make it more open. If you flip the building, then you have somehow a market hall, and then you have penthouses to pay it. Well, I had a point. So that compensates a little bit. But they have no view. Okay. Then we make a view. This is too expensive. This is only steel. So we make a kind of classic structure in that way, like Romans. Where is my lift? He said, okay, then we make a lift. So that's how, and that is how it works. And then you use Dutch technology, and they kiss each other, and then they go on like this, and then it's there. And then we have a rough structure that somehow loves the interior. And we dreamt about, say, windows that could open so that I could throw a rope down to my son and say to him, hey, get a fish, and then we can go up. It's about pop, I know, but that's exactly, icons should not be only museums. Icons should be exactly that, this kind of daily life that we should have. And I was very happy to see then what was happening, that people came in a lot. And and there are different stalls. When you have something like this, my marble has to change. I know the developer saying, can someone do that, blood on our soil, so we had to make another kind of marble in that future. And then, of course, I think this mixity is important. And you can sit on the roof, another one, because that's nice, because everyone wants to hang out, and then and it becomes like a landscape of a market. We learned from your markets, to be honest. And we are still doing with that, and that's what it is about. And then, yes, when you're in the market, I can look up, and I see there a person that starts to cook, and another one that goes to the bathroom. It becomes a little bit intimate, a bit cozy, no? And that is what I think also is, it's not elitist, is what it be. And then these are, of course, the most important things. Expensive windows, I know, to make that possible. But these are my guards. Whenever the developer wants to change this into something, there are 250 guards that say no. And then so public-private space is then combined. And yes, you get this kind of rooms. We sleep next to a beautiful painting always. You work next to it. You have a garden, and your children play on top of the market hall and love it in that way. And then you have, of course, this big window, the biggest of the Netherlands, made by this detail, so that with big storm they go up and down. But it's like a tennis racket, so it's doable as such. And we cover it with the soil of Rotterdam. Simply the same tiles go up. It's so Rotterdamish that it wants to adopt that, but it wants to give that this openness to it, and then it becomes our point of hanging out. Then it even heats up, and when it's -2 degrees, and people want to sit there in that way. And it is a tower, you could say, but it's a little bit bent in that way. Oh, I would have dreamt if some of your towers, I could have done that here next to your river, and to give more addresses then to the river, instead of this kind of insolent, introvert elements that are now there in that way. And then I'm happy that somehow it was acknowledged, and that somehow people like to love it. It was at a certain moment a little bit busy, so I had to close the doors, change it into other kind of fire exhausting elements, and it became somehow a kind of destination point. For the first time, Rotterdam came into the Lonely Planet, and it was we are very proud on that, and that's what architecture can do. But what's more important, of course, that this happens in front of the building, and that becomes for more people. I think that's what we have to try to achieve, and that yes, of course. Others are invited to be there in this kind of what you see on the internet to happening. And what's the next in this operation to work in Rotterdam with this kind of, what kind of objects are we going to add in that way? Here's the park. This is the Museum of Boijmans van Beuningen, a very beautiful museum, and they want to they have a storage, and that is because of the water problem. This billions of value is threat by our storm. So we have to make now an archive building, a depot next door. And that's funny because a depot is a very introvert element. So how can I turn that into something which is opening up? So this is the site. Oh, keep it like that. It's quite a big thing. So we make it round, that you can walk around in the park. We push it inwards as maximum so that we touch the planet only a little bit, and we make on top a bigger platform, and then I can walk around. And we use that to do something with the trees, that they can be on that roof, and that we then have a plaza that we celebrate the activities. And it forms a part of the museum park, which is like a series of chambers. And I worked on it when I was working with REM, when I was like 20-something, to make it possible. But then we continue. We want to make a building that looks like this, maybe. That is the best mirror in town, so that I can mirror myself, and that I'm there, and the plaza that we make as an advertisement, that I can look around the corner, like you have sometimes when you end up in a street and you want to go safely to the right, and that, of course, enlarges the sky. And then this kind of refrigerator, this introvert building, somehow enlarges the public space. And maybe now, like what happened, of course, in the Millennium Park in Chicago, something can happen in Rotterdam in that way. And then you go in, you have this big sorting machine that's open day and night, and that where you're surrounded with all these collections, you can open doors, you go in, and that's what it is. And then in the end, you have this new roof on top of it. And then when I'm in the current park, and I look at it, and I come closer to it, then I see, of course, the artists that surround it. My eyes goes up, I see the end of the park, and I even see the horizon of Rotterdam, and then it comes into this mirage, this floating forest on top. That's what this building wants to do. Also from the other side, I approach it, I see how you can enter it with a new mirror technique that opens itself, and then it's there in that way. So what's next? during the opening of the railway station, we made this ball to test it. Because a lot of people came, and there was this king. Where is my king? In that way. Well, you can see it. He is here, in that way, in that mirror. So somehow it starts to work, this idea of enlarging ourselves. So now the tests, how this relationship of inside-outside is working, how we are now constructing in that way, and that is what I'm happy to show you in the next year, if it works. A building in a park is possible. You can compensate it and you can enlarge it. It was this building wants to say. And then we continue with Rotterdam to make our roofs better by building houses now on the roof so that the middle class can live a little bit between up to the sky and have a view to that. And it becomes an advertisement at that moment for that we have to continue with all our classes to make it. And it becomes somehow like even with 40 square meters, Rotterdam becomes then cool because you can see it from everywhere, this house. And when I take a plane, then yes, you can still see it. It's what it wants to say. And it was happy that this is acknowledged and becomes now a policy. So we have to make prototypes, and then it becomes urbanism. Is it what it wants to say? And what is the next, of course? I love this one. This small sketch that I once made in order to say something about our bigger monsters in our city next to the station. Can't we make stairs? We normally have to ring at a doorbell. There's a man hanging behind a counter. What are you doing here? So you don't feel not to go further, because it's private. At the moment that we facilitate our roofs with this kind of elements, then maybe it could work. So it worked in the end. We could make it. Our mayor was proud on it, and it became a destination in Rotterdam. I mean, only a month, and with 450,000 people, that went up. I mean, this is fascinating, no? What are we going to upstairs? There's nothing to do. And it works. It wants to be there. If your sky bars would be like this, then I would love to do it, and not this kind of stupid elevators. And then halfway, you have these meetings. People are proud in that way, make this, and that's what it happens, and have this view, also me. And in that way, and this is what we are talking about. Of course, what is next in this case? And there were many people, that's true. This is the collection of icons. This is the Rotterdam Collection. Hey, it's there. I'm very happy. They made chocolate out of it. They had this kind of celebrations. I still love this moment that they have this kind of shows and that Muslima girls were like around it. And I think that's Rotterdam somehow, to get this kind of combination. And that, of course, our hooligans are part of it. And that we have this kind of celebration, a proud person that wants to use it for his fruit things, a guy that made his slides for a while. What a stair can do in that way. Is what it wants to say. So you have gold in your hands. You can make fantastic things here. And then, I still love the Huffington Post in this case. If you come in the Huffington Post, take care, because she's very sharp. So what happens here? They say, these stairs are a perfect excuse to go to one of Europe's most underrated cities. Then I think, okay, then we are doing something fine. But of course, what's next? The upper city is what we're doing. But this is now this again. So we have the proposal now to make this. And to say also to our neighbor that you should help. So that our theater gets a new roof. That we do that with a department store on that moment. That our mayor has a nice access. And that we make this kind of connections to our towers. That the Vanelle will get really beautiful. That also Jo Koenen gets a roof. And that Rem Koolhaas helps also a little bit. Our hipsters should be engaged in that way, and all our dancing places should do that. And we can make these connections, is what it wants to say in that way. And yes, also our library can become something nice. And of course, I have to help also. And my client here is also, and she was very proud to see it at that moment that she could contribute. So what is then now happening? Some of them are happening. So you make a stair, and then you make this more in that way. And here you can see lines coming up in this drawing about what the next plan is. To somehow make these connections and to make a new roof over Rotterdam is what it wants to say. And to see a kind of next extension coming up is what this dream is about. I make a jump. I have 12 minutes to go. And I could show more, but I will do that another time when I'm back in here in town. Because I want to show you of course, the smallest scale in that way that we have to face. I show you how green we can be, how accessible we can be to fill up this bucket list. I can also imagine that gradually we have to think also about flexibility as such. And flexibility is a word that normally developers say you make a grid and I can change it. And you get these boring buildings everywhere in that way that are done. So how can we work with that? And I take you for a minute to the smallest scale. Maybe some of you were also on a design show in the Netherlands in the Dutch Design Week in October, and where we explored this XS level in Eindhoven. And we made this house, this one. A house is a hotel, and where different ideals are created and juxtaposed under pressure. And we tested that house to see with the fire people how that would work, with Booking.com, how they like it or not. And it's called the We Go City that I would like to propose. And that is how to go from ego to we go is basically the issue. How does it work? So this is, again, I'm at the Y Factory for a moment. 17 egos, architects, that are, I want to make my best building, of course. But they have 17 clients. And they made their maximum beautiful building, is what they wanted to do. So they explored these clients through the internet and through Tinder, and they say, okay, what do you want? And they analyzed his character and how he works. And in this case, a bowling guy that wants to have a bowling alley and a bed, basically, with a chandelier on top, and leads to such a kind of house. That does not exist. I don't know who is the developer here, but I've never seen such a house. And it's not my style, but I think it's wonderful. Or if you want to have a kind of immaterial house, no columns. Shh. Who can make that for me? Or one that's more acoustically, or one that has more levels. There are so many dreams that we could make, is what these say clients somehow, and we help them a little bit, the students, to make this doable. But yeah, what is next in that way? Yeah? Because you know that if you make them like this, it feels, it's beautiful, but that's Los Angeles. I mean, it's like on Beverly Hills, basically. They don't talk with each other. But it becomes nice, and that's what I love. Kampungs, for instance, in Indonesia, or that they are compact. And if you compact them even more, put them under pressure, then you have to talk with each other. You have to defend. And I would, such a skyscraper is our client, and then I would, because that we have to make with more architects to make that possible. So how to deal with that? So there are different, say, gaming techniques, because this is also what this week you talk about what will happen in a digital era, and how can we work with it. I'm not afraid of it. I know we are all together to make that work and to criticize it. So here are different ways of dealing with these different, say, clients. And I'll show you one of the games with different gaming techniques. The automaton is different than the financial game. But the blind game is interesting. And so here you see it happening. Why? Because you don't know what the other is doing. So these are the ingredients. So basically it's this. You are, the guy with the bowling alley is fighting for this. And then someone is attacking this in that way at that moment. And that, I think, is an interesting moment. He has to defend in it. So, and ultimately, because you do this game, say, with 17 people, you do that more or less in 30 minutes. And then you gradually have this kind of composition, which is beautiful in that way. Never built on that way, because it's personal. And you get characters, is what it says. And where's my stair? You would say, no, okay, no problem. Because that's in the software. And so you say, we started with this. But ultimately, the stairs facilitate, search their way in that game and follow it in the end. And that's what it is. And what do you have then? And these are the different games. This is the satisfaction factor. And in the blind game, it's somehow, funnily, the highest in this research. And it looks incredible, I think. This is the housing composition. This is how the different patterns are. And this is what would be wonderful to make, I would say. There are two things, because during the game, you already know the neighbor is coming. So from ego, we go appears. But if I go gradually inside, and the corridors are like, wow, they're in between this puzzle. But if I am in a house, and I'm standing here, then I'm fascinated by this corner, because there is a family there that is intruding me. So that would be a beautiful family, is what it says. So it encourages you to go to that place and to see what happens. And then they have this collection as such that makes this kind of combination of identity and density, I would say. And that makes another translation on neutrality is what it wants to share with. And that's what you can see in this proposal. So what's next was indeed this test in that way to see how that would work. How you go in, have this kind of stairs, finds a guy, hey there, and then you can look back. This is how, hey, my friend is there in that way and sleeps in this point. And look back to the toilet and how you can see. Simple test, just for 2 weeks to see how that would work. And I can go into other places, we have a complete other kind of experience therefore, and another kind of sensation to sleep, to hang out, and to be there. Or here in the blue room, which is a fantastic space. That's what it wants. Or here in the red room, that's combined with that. The ultimate space, I would say. So that was published, and it became this advertiser or a checking. But what is next, of course? That I think, now we have to go on. So I still have 5 minutes to go, don't worry. And it's this, the flat hotel, and that is what we're trying to do.
Our hotel can accommodate up to 24 guests.
That is the idea for next year. To make, you are on your app, I want to have a big room. It says yes, and it negotiates during the day your room.
The hotel is made up of 360 panels which can be transformed on demand.
So every day you have another hotel, is what it wants to be in that design show. And I'm very curious how that will be. Yes, I have to do a lot. I have to check it, I have to make safety requirements, so there's a lot to do in that in order to make that possible, is what it is. So what is next in that way? So there are different tests at the moment. We make the minimum space and what's comfortable for people. How big should it be in that way? How much storage do I need and where should that be? Or if I am with 2 people, what is then needed? So with this voxelization, we try to understand now the desire of changing. So then we start to work on this kind of, say, a house, how to negotiate. Every house has a nucleus. You stand there, that's the point of gravity. But yeah, you have to swap in a little bit and to find out what's the best composition. So this software helps to mitigate to that. But then we translate it, of course, to, say, different, say, rooms that are currently in this model checking out in black how many conflicts are there. There will be no conflicts. The conflicts will be solved. So this is the software that somehow tries to find out how to reduce the amount of black spots. So this is our, say, new language of drawing, to make these optimization sequences and to see, yes, here, thank you, it worked. So there is like these moments that these kind of software start to work on it, and that's what we try to see. And then we mitigate this from 3D into 2D for this moment in order to make it a bit simpler in its transport system. So that's what its operation is about. And what is then next? Then this, say, is what is going to happen in this railworks. That how, say, you can see the timing a little bit. This is a bit faster, so it goes very slow. In that way, how it starts to move around and become something different. Then I think, okay, now we can talk about flexibility over time, is what it wants to say. And then what is next, of course? That we then, at that moment, see something like a typical Friday afternoon, what some students are investigating, and what people are doing. So the 2 rails are there. Some people are at home. They come in. So they go in. The good thing is I can make a lift everywhere in this thing. I don't need cores. I can simply go up wherever it wants, and then it reveals the space. So that's what this dream is about, to make that possible. Yeah. So what is next then? Because you don't believe it, of course. So let's go further. So here a test of the rail work that we are doing and how these cartridges, that simply are like tubes of 30 by 30 centimeters, are moving around over these rails in that way and make this kind of, say, things possible. And then I'm aware that I need technique for that. TAC, this is what, of course, is under construction. What are the things that we need, how to add to that? There are 2 wireless systems in it to make that possible. I know it's like a Luna Park thing, but I want to test it. I'm obsessed at the moment to make that somehow work and to see that. How the rail means simply with aluminum. Just a guy that does it in Chicago, that makes this together and see how it would work. And then it's there. And they're testing how that would work with each other, with the noding system. And the 2 machines that do it in that way, and how the devices are working. And I know it's dangerous, not yet, or it's vulnerable. I want to solve it in that way. That is what I hope to see. hopefully next year. Now you have seen it a little bit in Shenzhen in the Biennale, maybe. Maybe I can present it next time in Bangkok, this hotel. That would be fantastic to get enough. But of course, it's halfway. I was XS, no? You know. But of course, and I showed it, there will be more things are coming up. I think the Barba book was about that, and I show it because it was this dream. Some of you might know this Barba Papa figure in the 70s. Was like, and who can change? Who could become a piano, or it could be like a lover, and that way, and it could be a stair. And I was dreaming, can't we not apply? So with BASF at the moment, we're trying to work on this CHOs, so that are basically connections in certain rubber-like circumstances that can shrink, and that can de-shrink. And that is, we use it now in our hearts. In some of your hospitals, you have this kind of hearts that does this, and it's super expensive, but it's nice stuff. Because if you do that for our products, then you can, at any moment, I can have this basin. Or when I want to have a nice sofa, there it comes. And my neighbor has a beautiful cupola underneath. Or I want to have a window. It de-stresses, and it becomes something like that. And this is something, it's a critique of what we are doing these days. And we are talking a lot about density and about flexibility, and we do more and more, that's good. But look at it. And this, I'm watching television. My wife comes at home, takes a shower, gets something from the kitchen, and then we sit together. The other rooms could shrink. I don't need them anymore. So we are going to bed, and we sleep, and the rest can go out. In the morning, we wake up, we take showers, and take a breakfast, and then we go to our offices or our domains, and the house could shrink, is what this dream is about. And there's the office, so only one guy working there still. Then we become more, of course. Then we start to have different, say, meetings and gatherings during the day, and it grows and it shrinks again in the evening when we leave it. That means also that our neighbors are then behaving like that, in that way, and that somehow we make this kind of environment. If we make the calculation at the moment, how much space we not use in Western societies, then it's about, say, 75% that is empty in every moment. That is ridiculous in a way, no? And to see it. And you pose the question, of course, here, for instance, the lift, I have to move a little bit, my water has to move. So if we make that rubber, and it's a bit like in IKEA, and you have your kid somewhere is in this bubble bath playing, and you throw your other kid in, then the other kid doesn't feel. It dampens the material, and that's what this rubber is then doable at the end. So what is next is, with students, we work for BASF to say, what do we want to ask from them? So this film shows, like every second of our day, if we sleep, we don't need that much space. I don't say it should be like that, don't worry. It is only like a notation how much I would need. If I wake up in that moment, then I need more space. I want to immediately extend that and to see what is happening around me. What is the next is, of course, that this material can push you up. Wake up, man, you have to go, like Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, in a way. And then you start to think, how much space do I need before me? And that depends a bit on the speed and, of course, the direction that you want to have. So there is maybe, you need this in front of you, and how long do I keep that space is also what is questioning. So every student made a piece of this film, a questionnaire, to say, how fast can I look up to infinity, is what it wants to say. Or here, another, say, moment. Hermann Hertzberger always wanted to have a window that would say, I want to open it like that. Well, now you can do it in that way. And that material will de-stress it and make that gesture. Somehow architecture becomes completely different in the future if we follow that kind of technologies that are apparent and maybe latent at some kind of moment. So I go further in that case. What shall I do? I wake up, I make the window. I want to meet my son and his dog. So this was an interesting moment. How can two materials fuse and turn into a door? A door is different. I wouldn't mind to make a new Biennale in Venice to question that and to make that kind of... And then, of course, no pipe work anymore. It's like undulating and pulsating and water comes everywhere. If I give a sign, electricity will do that in that way. And that means also that I can swim everywhere in that way. The water comes together and it will be like this. And that is sensational if we can make a place like that. I'm not sure if it will be happening the coming year, but I think the We Go house is part of that operation, you can say. And I still like to show you that moment, this section, because you move, or is the house moving? It's like when you are jogging in a club. So that, I think, is a philosophical momentum that XS touches a larger scale. And what is then next? Of course, we work with students now on measuring that. You can do that here with Muybridge in a way. You see how much movement is there and how much space you need, and mirror that in its expectation. We do a test with Vitra, somehow to make with felt and chicken wire. To make a carpet. These two kids are doing that. So you have this carpet, you give an indication, and then you have a couch. Or a table. This is an interesting moment. When can this robotized thing, can that be that you can push on it? So what's next? How to operate that? So here you see, for instance, a way of touching that could work on another installation that we made a while ago. Let me see how fast that goes. Oh, there it is. So two napkins on the table. You touch it, and the other one reacts. That I think is intriguing, that by touching you can do certain kind of other things with it. So here also, you touch it and it reacts. We do it with our iPhones, but in the future with our doors will be also in that way will be happening. Or we can do it by talking, of course, by our voices. So here, oh sorry, does it work? Three panels and a guy. Yeah, it's a beautiful panel, I agree. And he talks back in that way. The question is, how does our voice relate to our wall? So here he becomes angry, and the wall becomes angry, more than even him. It's an insult in that way, it's happening in that way. So with the test, we test the relationship with talking and the reaction, and to code that, and to see, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's fascinating what ways that will come in the coming years. And then, of course, then you can walk, these are the sequence of it. I know, it's not there yet. I only can show you, if we think this week, these days, about the future, then this is a contribution to that. But I know that it goes further. That from rubber, from the organic, from the unorganic, I have to go to the organic. That is, I think, the most important question that we have to ask ourselves, so that I can also grow stuff in it. And then I call it Barba Mama, of course, so that it becomes like a next enterprise. And then I'm back again with Sapiens, that talks about what is happening these days around it, about the possibility of bioengineering, the fear for it, the dream, I mean, that only cyborgs will do that, and the inorganic life. So there's a danger in that, to make it more organic. So we try to paint now with students what things are happening. When do we don't need 3D printing anymore, but we use this kind of, say, organic modes? Is it mapped out over the years? How do we adapt our clothes and our bodies in that way in the future? And then it leads that, for instance, here a place in the Schouwburgplein in Rotterdam, now like that. And their flexibility comes in the coming 5 years. 5 years later, it becomes this kind of flexibility. But gradually, in 40 years, we might look like that in a way. It becomes, when we apply that kind of material, and I like this in a way, because somehow I'm back with the first slides in that way. If we make that material, where that organic material, when plants grow and they shrink, and I do that tests the coming time with different companies to make this kind of double elements possible, then we are again into this cushion around the planet where everything is green in that way. And then I answer your question about ultimately we make this hyperporous stuff that is somehow keeping the ventilation, keeping all our water, and turn it into good clouds everywhere. And then I may be there. And of course, one wonders a little bit how that will be. The history, does it have direction? Did I follow now in this hour with you a sequence in that way that has a direction? I showed you this evolution itself as an evolutionary project, but in the end, it's about the city, from XXS to XXL in that way. And they touch each other more and more. And that's very Nietzschean, I know, that from 0 to max, we are in a kind of cycle in that way. And then I answer maybe something of what he proposed in this evolutionary city. And as a PS, of course, that was again in this book, and then I throw it away. Ultimately, is this also a question what you and what we want is what we have to ask ourselves. I thank you very much for your attention.
Oh. Thank you so much, Winy. Very, very provocative. So we'll start with some questions from the floor. For anyone who has questions, you can raise your hand or also type into the mobile system. In the middle?
Do you have any project in Bangkok?
Very practical one. Yeah, we work for in Icon Siam. We make 2 elements. We work for Dolce & Gabbana to make their shop. And we hope, I cannot show it yet, to make also the museum. And so there are interior projects, but those are the first. Those are the ones that we are constructing at this very moment. So you can see them in half a year from then.
Thank you.
ค่ะคำถามต่อไปนะคะ
So they are small and cute. Yeah.
ค่ะ
So you have involved in so many major development schemes. What is your greatest happiness in delivering them, and what is your greatest challenges?
My greatest happiness is knowledge, to be honest. I know more, and I can also make it more clear in that way. So it's kind of sharing knowledge in that way. It's based on others and make it more. So that's the first joy. The second joy is that I think that architecture should not wait. Should engage also itself with that kind of elements, with that kind of, say, gaming or software, because we miss the boat in a while if we don't take it up. And that gives also a certain kind of joy. Am I frightened also? Yes. I think because is Barba Papa a dream or is it a nightmare? Because ultimately, when we have only that stuff, then that pops up through your signals and is there, then there is definitely no real estate anymore. It becomes surreal estate in that way. It's only energy. It looks almost like Le Petit Prince in the book of Saint-Exupéry. It's hyper-existential in that way. And that fascinates me also because that's, yeah. And somehow our society, I mean, I know you have to go through middle class before you say that, but I think in Europe and this issue of sharing or living in tiny houses is more there than ever before. So this surreal estate is closer than you think. And that is exactly that moment of joy and not joy. I think that's what innovation is about. And yes, I know there's a lot of people that if there's fear, then they stop. Developers stop in that way. Investors don't know how to tackle it. The best investors are those that have an idea how to discuss a little bit what experimentation they should do, to see one step further. And then they are in the anti-cyclic moment of time, and so I try to convince them with that kind of ideas to do that. And that is then again another moment of joy. So joy and fear is like a twin pair that is, I don't know, that they will be always together. And I would recommend you to not avoid that. Because ultimately, life is about curiosity, no? And not about confirmation only. And it's, so that is what this duality basically says in your question. And that's a hope that I can convey then this polarity to you. And to bring, say, this doubleness one step further in that way. And we need it for every step of research to do that. For every piece of architecture goes one step further. And I need also you. You make some building and I will respond to that. So, and due to our current, say, global systems, when we had a discussion about the Tower of Oleshere, well, because something we do, we are also pixel-minded these days. Huh? There's a group of pixelators between the architects. And there's a tower here, a beautiful thing. But tomorrow morning or later I will see it if the balconies really work. But that's because I'm intrigued by it. And yes, it's also, you can see that in more offices. And we try to innovate with that. I think it's a super interesting moment that you also learn from the others and make it better in that way. And that is, and I'm not afraid about that. And I think the book Copy Paste was about that lately, when we bring that on the market. So that also stresses a little bit that, yeah, we need each other in order to innovate, and about communication. And the fear of originality, of not being original, I think there's a fear of referencing. Everyone needs to be an original architect, fair enough, but not everyone will do that. So then it's better to make something better than the one before, is also one of the obsessions that I deal with. And it shows again this kind of dichotomy between plus and minus in that way. Please read the book, and especially the last chapter, the generator, where an object, and it analyzes immediately the sources, say how much Marcel Wonders is in it, and how much of that line kind of designer. That I love that. So that's kind of, and that starts to turn it into something which is missing still, and how to improve it. Oh, other question?
And can we have the next question from the screen, please? From your point of view, what is your vision of Bangkok, future city?
My God. Of course, I would. Why is there no? Why doesn't it exist? That's the question. What it actually says. Why don't we have a vision what Bangkok could be? Why are some cities like Paris trying to do that and trying to measure it and trying to make that more visible? Why aren't you doing it? It's basically the subject of this question. She or he is completely missing that vision yet. And I mean, I'm also curious what it could be. I mean, the place is much more different than 15 years ago. You are more active than those days. There's more architects and architecture than before. In that way, there's an energy which I find fascinating that we can and should use. There's more metro lines than before, and therefore you can escape a little bit from the harshness of the traffic. But there is still a lot to do to work on the sewage system as I go through your water and environment. So that I want to work on that, man. How to make a river that I want to swim in it again is a task that we could say to itself. And yes, I see more variety. There's more acceptance of small scale and big scale together. It's not only skyscrapers, but also things like this is kind of combination that I find very positive. But where does it lead to? That is your question. Or where is he or she? I really don't know. I think it's an important question to show it. And I can only compare it how we work in Jakarta on the issue of super kampungs, to turn the kampungs into something more intense and also more specialized. Because certain kampungs can work more on fish and others can work more on soybeans, and that will lead to a kind of funny collection. But then I didn't solve the traffic problem of Jakarta yet. How can I create sufficient money to do that? Not by, I hated that discussion in Jakarta at a certain moment that they say we should move the capital to Banjarmasin, to Borneo, to the center of the archipelago, because there were too many, say, strikes and too many demonstrations in Jakarta. That was so incredibly stupid to make a kind of new Brasilia somewhere. No, that would be an escapism, and you would leave Jakarta behind. You have to solve it, I think. Stay there. Use those $40 billion dollars that would cost this new future city to repair Jakarta. Was basically, I think, what we tried to do with different architects to do it. It stays now. And yes, now it doesn't mean that 40 billion is guaranteed. I'm aware. But to make that exercise, how much metro lines would you need? How much does it cost? What economy? How to make that beautiful, say, swimming river in that way? Did anyone already give a technical solution for that in this audience? I didn't see it, so maybe it's there. And that's what maybe this question is about, how to visualize that. And then we can construct. I would love to open a kind of, say, Bangkok fantasy studio somehow that you can test with each other, with the universities here, how much that would take and how to do that in that way. What would happen if there are no cars anymore, but only sky cars? And in the future to do that, and what do you need to facilitate that city for that? Where are those fantasies among you, and how to make that grand and how to make that exemplary? Then other cities would learn from you in that way. So I didn't give a direct answer. I'm aware. I don't want. because I think the complexity is much bigger than I can do in one sentence. It would be an insult if I would give only a one-liner in this case, and it would not be true at all. With this answer, I hope to inspire this gang, this group together, that we can make it more visible in that way, and to make that manifesto that could be the next, say, Biennale, or the next design show could be about that, and make that and very clear to each other.
And on that note, please join me a big round of applause for Winy Maas.
Thank you.